It's a great pleasure to be here. Just a little bit about my background. I'm a dual qualified landscape architect and urban designer, so I do feel a bit more comfortable here speaking to you this evening. About 5 years ago, a number of us noticed that there'd been a decline in large urban trees, specifically in London at the time. And we called together a meeting and sent out about 40 or 50 invitations. And to our surprise, about 40 or 50 people turned up. And the gathering was without really agenda. It was quite an open gathering, the first one. But it included people from all walks of life across all the professions. So not only those in development, planning, architecture, urban design, landscape architects, arboriculturalists, tree officers, members of local government, members of central government, and also others that are related to trees in the public realm. Including insurance companies, etc. And this is just a snapshot of some of the people that turned up and the debate that took place. As a result of that, we decided to form a Trees and Design Action Group, and the list of members has grown fairly exponentially over the years, and it's now a very, very diverse group who collaborates together. And just so that you understand, it's an apolitical, non-profit making organisation. It's a loose affiliation, or has been up until recently, which I'll touch on in a second, of like-minded people who have an interest in urban tree cover. We began to get ourselves organised and put together a mission statement, which I won't suggest we'd go through. But we were very keen on, when naming the group, to make sure that there was emphasis on action, because we didn't want to be a group that was perceived to be, I'm not suggesting anyone in this room does it, but was doing a lot of talking but not actually getting around to doing anything. And that was a very key part to what we did. So we put together a 10-point action plan, which we thought we could deliver. And there's some quite important parts in there, obviously integrating solutions, which urban designers form a very important part. Really getting into policies and tree strategies, both at central and local government level, because in the end analysis, after all the fine words and the talking, more often than not, as urban designers, you'll know that you need policy context there. To raise awareness, to look at three-dimensional aspects of London. It's a very London-centric initiative initially, and obviously elements of the other aspects of management of the public realm, aftercare, maintenance and townscape. And obviously we worked in tandem with a lot of the growers, of which Keith Saker from Barcham is one, so that we went from not cradle to grave, but it covered the whole raft of interested parties in this, what is in effect a very simple thing of a tree or a group of trees in an urban area. But the complexities to planting them, managing them, maintaining their longevity, and educating people about the functions that they perform. And this slide just summarises some of the benefits that accrue from the large structural trees. I won't go through them all. I'm sure you'll be very familiar with them. The amenity ones of townscape character and value for cultural heritage. But there's obviously the biodiversity issues. They reduce the urban heat island effect, and the climate change agenda is right at the top of the list at the moment. And also the latest empirical research is showing that they're of benefits to health and well-being. But we weren't really the first ones to look at this, and this is just a quick series of slides, some of the ones that the Trees and Design Action Group have produced, just to track some of the history of where we've been. So here we have London with St Paul's in the background, obviously after they'd deforested the city, and there's not a great deal left, and the only tree that's remaining there, somebody did mention what it was actually used for, but I think it was used for hanging amongst other things, so not a brilliant start for the urban tree movement. But of course urban designers were moving this forward during the 17th and 18th centuries, and this is the embankment shortly after the trees have been planted, probably as advanced nursery stock trees as we would know them today. I think they'd be advanced nursery stock, would they, or semi-mature trees, but they're reasonable size, very closely spaced. And then during the 1930s, how they've developed and grown, and they've been thinned out, and the canopies are beginning to develop, and the canopies are having to be lifted because now you've got motorised vehicles, and so there's a whole maintenance and management regime. And now the trees on that same location, which you'll drive past or cycle past or whatever, or walk past on the embankment in the summer, and all the various benefits that they provide. And then during the winter, also it's a very different scene with the traceries of branches. What we wanted to try and do was say, if we don't look at a phased programme of succession for these trees, let alone the diseases that are now quite prevalent in this country for a whole raft of different types of tree species, you will eventually end up with something that could be, and it still always reminds me of Moscow, but I don't know why, there's no one here from Russia, is there? No, that's probably good. But it is quite feasible that this could happen. And we began to promote these, we put it out to the press, we had articles in the Times, and we began, Keith, myself, and one or two others, began to put on a roadshow and we took, they're a bit shock horror, some of the images, but we took summer in Parliament Square, winter in Parliament Square, and then Parliament Square without trees. And some of these trees are actually being removed now. You know, they are, as they're phased out, they're becoming veteran trees, they're becoming dangerous, or they're becoming diseased. At the same time as this was happening, there was a growing interest, obviously through policy context, particularly with the European Landscape Convention, as well as I mentioned, climate change also became a very burning issue, particularly with Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth, and the whole public awareness was beginning to arise. And then, of course, there was the emergence of the green infrastructure movement, which, when I started my education, it was called landscape strategies. Colin Moore would probably remember that, or a landscape master plan. But the green infrastructure movement is a much more holistic approach. And of course, urban trees are an integral part of that. As you know, green infrastructure doesn't need to be physically connected. It can be a chain of greenery, which goes from green roofs, brown roofs, vegetation on podium decks, urban trees on streets in terra firma, urban parks, balconies, balustrades, then into regional parks and out into the country. And all of these things link together for human activity and health and well-being, and of course biodiversity. We continued to promote the work that we were doing, and just going back to the policy context point, one of the key things that we did in the MERS London Replacement Plan, we managed to secure a position for the Trees and Design Action Group as a consultee through that process, which was something that we were actually very pleased about for the reasons that I'd mentioned earlier. So we moved into that realm. We also began to make a whole host of publications to using the resources that we had available to us. And it's amazing, many hands make light work, but with a group of like-minded people who meet every 2 months, and the attendance is between 10, possibly 20 people who'll come along. Everyone gives their time, pro bono, and it's amazing what you can begin to do as a group. And I think it's probably one of the strengths of the group that it has that flexibility to it as well, because up until recently it hasn't been constituted, but I will touch on that. So we began to promote the work that we're doing through all of the various institutes, through developers, through promoters, and through builders as well, which is important. I think one of the things that a number of us did in particular was we brought the arboricultural world together with the development and promotion and planning world, because up until that point, and with the insurance world, and with other interested parties, with engineers, with the ICE, etc., because they're all involved in delivering that. It culminated in a number of publications. This one you can view online. Again, it's free of charge unless you want to buy one, and I would really strongly recommend it. I suppose I would, wouldn't I? But it is a really fantastic document, and it gives a very simple, or comparatively simple, guide to decision makers on how they go about maintaining, promoting, delivering urban tree cover and perpetuating it. Because one of the key things about this is that in terms of sustainability, if we don't start doing what our ancestors did in the 17th and 18th century, for example, on the embankment by planting those standard trees, there won't be 2 or 3 generations down the line, or future generations, that will be able to benefit from the way we're benefiting. So it's really not so, what we're doing now, or hopefully doing now, is something that's going to be important for future generations. And we feel, quite strongly about that. I won't go through the contents of the book. You have a look at it online. I've brought a hard copy here. You're more than welcome to have this one. And first up can have this one. I've brought this one along. I should have brought a couple more. Quite an expensive publication to produce. I think by the time we'd finished, it must have been in the region of about £40,000 it cost to deliver it, because we had researchers involved, we appointed them, it was done through sponsorship and through donation through the group. And there's a whole raft of guidelines in there, but specifically it's based around 12 key principles, which are divided into 4 sets. And I won't run through those, but it basically covers all of the various stages of planning, of design, of the plants themselves and their protection, and then the maintenance and aftercare, which is so important to their longevity. It's a riveting read, and any developer or local planning authority or government organisation or whoever, I think, can benefit from it. It's been posted, it was launched, it's been posted out to a great many local authorities, particularly aimed specifically at decision makers, because we want to try and get some of the guidelines, as I mentioned, into policy context. What's happened since then really is that the Trees and Design Action Group has flourished in terms of starting as a London-centric organisation. It's now, there are active groups now in Birmingham, active groups in the southwest. There's shortly to be groups emerging in the northwest, in Manchester. We've got interest from Northern Ireland, from Belfast, and we've actually got interest from a lot of the European cities and cities around the world as well, because we're all faced with not dissimilar issues in terms of our urban tree cover and its succession. And in order to be able to really take Trees and Design Action Group forward for the next 5 years, we had a lot of debate about the governance, because obviously when you publish something like this, then there's copyright issues, there's issues of potential liabilities or the guidance that's contained in it. And so what we've done is we've formed a trust, a charitable trust, which is specifically to sit and provide some governance and a mechanism through which, obviously when you're dealing with several thousands of pounds and tens of thousands of pounds, you need to have a very transparent accountancy, etc. And so we've set up a trust to deal with that. But it hasn't changed the actual membership. Membership continues to be free. Anyone can come along to the meetings if they wish, and anybody is interested in joining, you can join. There's no membership fee. We do like people to participate, though, if they come along and to bring their particular skill set. I tend to provide some of the urban design expertise, but there's also architects and planners as well that come along. And I would recommend it to all urban designers. It's comparatively, as I say, a small but very important part of urban design, and you'd be surprised how complex it can be. That's all I was going to say. Thank you.